It began with nothing unusual, just a quiet Saturday night in the town of Ashford, Illinois, a place where the streets fell silent after dusk, where the only movement came from the wind stirring the tall grass by the roadside, and the occasional rumble of a passing freight train. Far in the distance, Daniel Whitman's small house sat at the edge of Maple Street, pressed between two vacant lots where weeds grew waist-high. Inside, the living room glowed with the pale light of an old television set. Daniel had settled into his worn recliner, a half-empty bottle of beer resting on the side table, the remnants of dinner cooling in the kitchen sink. The film on screen was an old black and white, one of those French dramas he'd never really understood but liked to watch anyway. In them, silence felt heavier than words, and the weight of a single glance carried more meaning than entire paragraphs of dialogue. It was peaceful, ordinary. Exactly the kind of evening Daniel liked. Until the picture shifted. At first, it was nothing more than a flicker, just static dancing across the screen for half a second. Ashford was notorious for unreliable service. Power cut out during storms, phones barely worked, and internet connections slowed to a crawl. But this was different. The film distorted, faces on the screen stretching and warping as though melting. Then the picture cut away entirely, replaced by something else. A vague silhouette, dark against a gray backdrop, blurred at the edges as if submerged underwater. Daniel sat up, confusion etching into his features. He leaned forward, waiting for the image to correct itself, and that was when he heard it. A whisper, low and muffled, almost indistinguishable at first. He frowned, turning the volume down. It wasn't the film. It wasn't static. It was a voice. The words were impossible to make out, broken and twisted, as if dragged through static. He turned the television off. The room sank into silence. But the whisper didn't stop. Daniel froze, every muscle tensed, his breath caught in his throat. The sound now came from somewhere else. Not the speakers, not the TV, but from deeper inside the house. From the hallway. The Whitman home was an old one, built over a century ago. The wooden floors creaked under the lightest step, the walls carried drafts, and doors never fully shut right. Daniel knew its sounds, every tick and groan, every little quirk that came from age. But he had never heard this. Heart pounding, he stood, setting the beer aside. His bare feet pressed against the cool floor as he stepped toward the hallway. The whispering grew sharper, clearer, though still jumbled, as though it was both far away and right beside him at the same time. That was when he noticed something that froze him mid-step. The basement door was open. He never left the basement door open. The dark mouth of the stairwell yawned before him, swallowing the dim glow from the living room lamp. The whisper rose from below, curling upward through the air, wrapping around his ears. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to close the door. To bolt, it shut. To walk, Hawaii. But Daniel found himself moving forward, almost against his will. His hand reached out, grasping the banister. The stairs groaned as he descended. The smell of damp earth and rotting wood filled his nose, heavy and suffocating. His skin prickled with the sensation of being watched, though he couldn't see a thing. He reached the bottom and tugged the string for the single light bulb that hung in the center of the room. The bulb swayed, casting sickly yellow light across the basement. Shadows stretched unnaturally long against the cracked concrete walls. Nothing. Just the old clutter of storage boxers, broken furniture, and a washer that hadn't worked in years. But the whisper was louder now. Daniel turned, his eyes scanning every corner. His pulse thundered in his ears, and then the light flickered. When it steadied, he saw it. In the far corner of the basement stood a shape, human in outline, but blurred, its body shifting like smoke, edges dissolving and reforming as though it couldn't fully hold itself together in this world. Its head tilted unnaturally, and then, for the first time, the whisper formed words. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was layered, multiple tones speaking at once, male, female, young, old, all blending into a single echo. Daniel stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a box. His breath came fast and shallow, panic clawing at his throat. The figure didn't move toward him. It only stood there, tilting its head further, as though studying him. Then, slowly, it raised one arm and pointed at him. The light bulb popped. Darkness swallowed the basement. Daniel bolted up the stairs 2 at a time, slamming the door shut behind him. He looked at chest, heaving, sweat running down his temples. He pressed his back against the door, listening. Silence. And then 3 knocks came from the other side. Soft, deliberate, slow. From that night forward, nothing in Ashford felt the same. Daniel couldn't escape the presence. At first, it lingered at the edges of his home, shadows and mirrors, footsteps on the porch when no one was there, the faint murmur of whispers crawling up from the basement. But soon, it followed him into town. At the diner, he'd see someone's reflection in the window sitting across from him. Though the booth was empty, on the street he'd hear someone whisper his name, even though no one was near. In the grocery store, he'd glance down an aisle and catch the blurred outline of that same shifting figure. And always, the whisper. You shouldn't have come here. He stopped sleeping. He stopped working. People noticed. In a town as small as Ashford, everyone noticed. But whenever someone asked what was wrong, Daniel couldn't explain. How could he tell them that something had slipped through from the basement, that it had latched onto him, that no matter where he went, it followed? Days turned into weeks. The whisper grew louder, the visions stronger. He started waking with bruises on his arms, scratches across his chest. Sometimes, he'd wake standing in front of the basement door, key in hand, though he had no memory of getting out of bed. The line between dream and waking life blurred. One night, the whisper woke him again. But this time, it wasn't calling from the basement. It was in his room. He opened his eyes, heart hammering, and saw the figure at the foot of his bed. Clearer now, its features forming, though twisted in ways that didn't belong to the human body. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, whispering in that chorus of voices. You brought it with you. Daniel screamed. The lights in the house exploded. And then, silence. The next morning, neighbors noticed the Whitman house standing quiet, the blinds drawn, the car still in the driveway. No sound from inside. They assumed Daniel was sleeping off a long night, but days passed. No one saw him. When the police finally entered, they found the house in disarray, broken glass littering the floors, and the basement door wide open. But Daniel Whitman was never found. The only thing left was the faint smell of damp earth drifting up from the basement. And if you stand outside the old Whitman house on a quiet night in Ashford, some say you can still hear it, a whisper curling through the air. You shouldn't have come here.